Coming to you from the Premier Giant Production Studios, you are listening to the Premier Podcast with me, your host, Matt Nicholson, a.k.a. The Matt Attack, and sitting alongside me, Noah Weddle, a.k.a.
The Talent.
Ladies and gentlemen,
we're here. Ooh, welcome to the podcast. I'm Noah Weddle. Joining me is Matt Nicholson. What's going on, Matt?
Not a lot. What's going on, everybody? We're here today because we wanted to discuss something in the news today, something that interests both of us, and really it interests everybody when you bring it up. It's everyone loves a good conspiracy theory. And today we're going to be discussing one of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time. Now, first, in the news today, October 26, 2017, President Donald Trump has been teasing the release of all the classified information that the government currently has regarding the Jfk assassination. Now, the Jfk assassination took place on November 22nd, 1963, one day before my birthday, in fact. It was 24 years before I was born.
Does Thanksgiving fall on your birthday?
This year it does, yep.
I was just thinking that.
Yep, this year Thanksgiving falls on my birthday, so when you're at home, join your turkeys. Feel free to get online, wish me a happy birthday on our website, premiergiantproductions.com, for all your needs in general.
And we're also on Facebook and YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube. But anyway, this President Trump has been teasing the release of all these documents that have been locked in CIA, FBI, classified information lockers for years and years and years under the category of top secret. And a lot of this information people have been pining for years and years and years because everybody wants to know what really happened on that day in Texas. What did the government know that its people did not regarding who killed JFK? So I'm sure everybody knows that JFK is believed to be...
Sorry, but I believe, honestly, when it gets released, it's just going to be a whole lot of nothing.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, is that I think this is going to be a whole lot of,
I could even see Trump taking like a manila folder and just put like a slip of paper that says he acted alone. And just like, here you go.
Well, let's be honest. With conspiracy theorists, it's not like it's going to change their minds. Like, because you could just, the government's not releasing everything. And that's why... The one problem I have with conspiracy theories kind of in general is because a lot of times it becomes an agenda-driven thing and it becomes like a rebellion against the government. And
they see it the way they want and nothing's going to change that, even if they're staring at the evidence.
Well, if you ask, like, I have no problem with people asking questions about something that doesn't make sense. But if you're given an answer that makes sense, you should probably consider that instead of, that's, blah, blah, blah. That's the government, man. And that's then blah, blah.
Especially if it's been locked in a file for, 50 years now?
1963.
Yeah, 55 years.
The Warren Commission was released, I believe, in 1966. You might want to look that up. I'm not sure what year the Warren Commission was released. But JFK was believed to have been killed in but actually he was shot by a lone assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, in a Texas book depository in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. And actually, 2 years ago my brother lives in Texas. He lives about an hour away from Dallas, and we went to Dallas to visit, and we actually went to Dealey Plaza and took a tour of the book depository where Oswald is believed to have shot Kennedy.
They have like the same sheets on the bed and everything.
Well, no, it used to be, like, it was a book depository, so up there was just cardboard boxes and everything else. But now it's changed. It's become basically a museum where you go up to the 6th floor and they have tables set up all over the place, and you basically have headphones, and there's like 60 stations. And when you go from one station to the other, you're supposed to like go station 2, station 3. And they have the actual window blocked off in this clear glass case. So you can go to the window right next to it that's about 3 feet down, and you can basically see the same view. And that's a little eerie. But
why am I thinking... I thought I saw pictures where... I thought he stayed there. I thought it was a book depository, but it was also like a rooming, like a board.
No, it was just no.
What am I thinking then?
I don't know. He worked at the book depository, and he basically stacked boxes is what he did. And the day that President Kennedy was coming through, he was believed to have set up a little perch up there by the 6-story window with that bolt-action rifle that he allegedly used on that perch. And there's been eyewitness testimony, who have said that they saw somebody with a gun up in that window, and the people who saw it actually thought it was Secret Service setting up there just in case. But no, it was a book depository where he worked, and there was cardboard boxes all surrounding him, and he actually set up this perfect little perch for him to shoot out of the window.
I wonder how nobody that worked with him saw him or noticed him doing anything like that.
Well, there was people on the 5th floor that heard what sounded like, or was determined to be, shell casings falling on the floor. Now, you can't for sure say that was shell casings falling on a wood floor and everything else, but they heard the shell casings falling around the time that the shooting took place.
So he just walks into work with a rifle. Nobody says anything.
Well, this was 1963, but he was carrying it in a type of case and like this bag over it, I believe, where it just people didn't. And
it's funny because it's like, oh, you bring a rifle today? Hey, the president's going to be in town today, driving down the street.
No,
what
I think
a coincidence!
I'm guessing it came in a case where he assembled the rifle, so it came in a different.
Yeah,
he assembled it when he was at the depository. But this JFK conspiracy is something that I've really been interested in for a long time, and I started off probably the way a lot of people started off, watching the Oliver Stone film JFK. I believe it was made in 1991 or 1991, starring Kevin Costner. And the whole movie basically promotes a conspiracy theory of more than one shooter, and they say that they think that it was Fidel Castro in Cuba had something to do with it, and Lyndon Johnson was behind it, or they suggest that Lyndon Johnson was behind it, and it was aspects and parts of the military-industrial complex that were behind it, and there was a whole slew of people that wanted Kennedy killed. But the Warren Commission, it was Earl Warren, who was a Supreme Court justice, was put in charge of the investigation by Lyndon Johnson to investigate it, and then a few years later, Earl Warren came out with this commission, or this report that basically stated that JFK was shot by a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. Have you seen the movie JFK?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I just remember Ed Asner was in it.
Ed Asner, yeah. There was actually a lot of people in that movie. A lot of cameos and a lot of Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, John Candy.
Did you see the new movie about Jackie with Natalie Portman?
No, I didn't.
I haven't seen that either. I don't know if it'd be any good or not, but
oh, I don't know.
I think it focuses on her after.
Oh, okay.
But,
was that Natalie Portman? I thought it was. Oh no.
Yeah, it's Natalie Portman.
Okay.
She looks exactly like her too. It's crazy.
Well,
anyway.
So there's aspects of the JFK conspiracy, questions that people have, and obviously at the forefront of it is people believe that there was another gunman on behind the grassy knoll that shot Kennedy because of that frontal shot that got him in the face in the famous Zapruder film where his head's going back into the left. People believe that he was shot from the front because they say that because of his head going back, that physics dictate that he had to have been shot from the front. And Oswald
from the side, right?
Who Oswald?
Didn't he? If Oswald
was up in the 6th floor depository, and what happens is that the JFK that little, I can't think of what you call it when all those cars are driving in a road, the little parade thing. They came around this real sharp turn, that's real sharp, and you see it in person, it's crazy. And then then Kennedy's heading this way towards a bypass. They're at the end of the parade where they're going to get on the bypass and head back to the airport, I believe. And Oswald shot him as he was going this direction.
So from behind.
Shot him from behind, yep.
And down and behind.
Now, one of the big theories, now I am not a JFK conspiracy theorist. I think that it was Oswald. I think he acted alone. Now, I think
it's still cool to think about, though.
Yeah, I think that other people may have known that he was going to commit the murder, and that stuff's kind of impossible to prove now. But I certainly believe that Oswald, as far as the physical shooting goes, he acted alone. And I've been studying this about 10 years. I've read a number of books. There's a book that Vincent Bugliosi, you know who Vincent Bugliosi is, the author.
Yep.
He wrote a book, I think it's called Reclaiming History.
He wrote the Charles Manson.
Helter Skelter. Yep. He believed that there was a lone gunman, and he kind of goes through and minute by minute talks about what happened the day of the Kennedy assassination. Now, one of the popular theories is they say there's the magic bullet theory, that bullet that's supposed to be zigzagging around and it hits Governor Connolly, governor of Texas at the time. It went through like 5 or 6 different spots in their bodies, and then one of the theories is, oh, you have this magic bullet, a bullet can't zigzag and go all the way around the car and everything else. But what a lot of people don't know...
It's like what's his name's arrow in Guardians of the Galaxy. He controls it.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this whole magic bullet theory, what a lot of people don't realize is that they're saying, well, the way that Kennedy was sitting right behind him, there's no way that that bullet could have zigzagged that way. But people don't realize is that that car was custom made for that parade. So they weren't sitting right behind. I believe Governor Connolly was a little bit... okay, so the Warren Commission was in 1964. I apologize. But as far as that car goes, like, Governor Connolly was sitting a little bit further down than Kennedy was, and he was a little bit to the right of Kennedy. So if you add that up with where the shots came from, it makes sense, the pattern that bullet took and where they hit him in different spots. I think it hit Kennedy in the shoulder and then hit Connolly right underneath his rib and shattered a couple of ribs.
I've also heard people say, like, Jackie knew about it because did you see the way she reacted when he got shot? And it's like, she did what everybody would do. It happened, and she got out. She panicked and got out.
I've never heard that. That's just silly.
You've never heard that?
No.
I've heard it.
Like you see your husband's head get shot.
Yeah, you're getting out of the car.
Yeah. But that's one big popular belief is that the magic bullet theory proves there was a conspiracy. Well, no, it just, you have to look at the logistics of that car and where they were sitting, and it makes perfect sense when you realize that he was sitting at an angle and he was sitting further down than what Kennedy was. So when you look at that, the trajectory of the bullet makes perfect sense.
Did you know this is considered the biggest conspiracy theory ever? The most widely believed one, too?
Oh, yeah, because, like I said,
it's so popular.
Well, how many conspiracies have a Oscar-winning movie made about it? And, how many people... I have family members that will argue with me about it, and they basically just use JFK, Oliver Stone terminology. That's the only thing that they... I mean,
Oliver Stone's pretty accurate when he does movies. He really does study everything possible.
Oh, no, I understand.
You can't take it as gospel, though.
No, but when you just look at... Because basically you're just trusting this movie that was made, and...
Yeah.
And basically just arguing that. But you need to read a little bit about it and understand the different facts. And with a conspiracy, a lot of times people will bring up questions, like things that don't make sense.
Have you heard of the Jim Mars theory?
No.
It's 103 witnesses shortly after that died of mysterious circumstances. And it didn't get any traction. Nobody really... Who was he?
I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah, hold on. Let me read it. Go ahead and talk. I'm just reading about it.
Oh, well, the Oliver Stone movie is the reason why that's so big, because, it presents everything in such a matter-of-fact way that people say, yeah, that wasn't, how in the world is that not considered a conspiracy? And then in 1978, I believe it was, there was a Senate committee hearing, or congressional committee hearing, I can't remember which one it was, that listened to audio of the bullets being shot, and they then ruled because of that it was technically ruled a conspiracy. And that's another kind of line of evidence that people use.
You know how they say Jack Ruby was part of the mob. He was in the mafia. The Mars theory is saying that one of the journalists, Dorothy Kilgallen, she was granted an interview with Jack Ruby, and she ended up dying before the interview in a weird way. It doesn't say exactly how, but a lot of the people that died, the witnesses, were connected to the mafia in some way or had spoken out against the mafia in some way. So there could be some kind of involvement that way.
Yeah, I mean, there could be aspects of the mob, and the thing is that Kennedy had a lot of enemies. There's no doubt about that. There was
Well, the Kennedys probably owed money to the mafia.
Oh, you had.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Their dad he made his fortune basically bootlegging liquor into the country during Prohibition.
That whole family kind of had some pretty shady goings-ons.
Yeah,
so.
the Kennedys in general were, with the bootlegging liquor, and then the issues that all of them had with different scandals. One, you had the Ted Kennedy scandal with the girl in the lake and things like that. But there was a I can't remember her name, but there was a woman who I believe she was a Russian spy who Kennedy was having an affair with. It was a Russian spy, and there was another girl who was basically a runner for the mafia that Kennedy was having an affair with. And so there's a lot of, the mafia, I believe, this is just my opinion, I think they knew a lot, they had a lot on Kennedy. And so Kennedy, very well could have pissed the wrong person off, could have been with the wrong woman. And
well, it was a really charged time too.
Oh yeah,
Kennedy's presidency.
Well, yeah, this was during the early '60s, and you had the whole Cold War going on with Russia and the whole communist scare, and
a lot of people hated him. So
well, yeah, and you had the whole thing with Joseph McCarthy during the '50s and the '60s was a senator. I can't remember what state he was from, but he was the one that was pushing the whole communist scare, and communism was basically seen the way that ISIS is seen today. It was, a threat to the stability of the world, and communism was taken over. And so people were scared to death of the Soviets.
And the Bay of Pigs, too.
Yeah, Bay of Pigs was the Cuban issue that took place like in 1961, I think it was. But you had the whole issue with Russia, and a lot of people, and even in the CIA, FBI, a lot of people believed that Kennedy was soft on communism. And so there's a lot of people that was basically leery that Kennedy was going to end up allowing the United States to be taken over by the Soviets and end up under communist rule. There's actually, have you heard about the girl who had an affair with Kennedy during her internship? Her name was, I think it was Mimi Beardsley.
I've heard the name. She
was a intern during this whole situation, and she had an affair with Kennedy. It's kind of a funny story. She wrote a book a few years ago, and 4 days into her internship, she had been spotted by Kennedy, and Kennedy had pursued an affair with her. I think that's how fast this guy worked.
Kind of like a Weinstein-y.
Yeah, but
let's not bring him up.
Except for Kennedy was a young, charming, most powerful guy in the world.
Yeah.
And he
didn't have to blackmail you into it.
Yeah, he was with this Mimi Beardsley who had an affair with him. She wrote this tell-all biography a few years ago, and she said in this book that one time Kennedy made the comment to her that he'd rather his children be red than dead.
Oh yeah,
and that's during the whole Cold War, where they're scared to death of going to end up in nuclear war with the Soviets. So there was a lot of people who thought that Kennedy was soft on communism. And then when you brought up the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, there's a lot of people that were upset with Kennedy over the way he handled the situation with Cuba, refusing to give air support to those people who were stuck in Cuba in that invasion.
They also think that Cuban, leadership could have had something to do with it.
Well, yeah, Fidel Castro is a fixture in a lot of JFK conspiracies. Did Castro?
He's a pretty shady guy.
Yeah, Castro did an interview a while ago. I want to say it was with Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota.
Wait, he's still alive?
Who?
Castro?
No, Castro died.
Okay, I thought so.
A while back, he did an interview. Or I'm not sure if it was an interview. I think it was just a sit down. Jesse Ventura has talked about this, where he asked Fidel Castro about the Kennedy assassination, and Fidel Castro said that his country had nothing to do with it, and he thought that, he said that if he did, his country would be wiped off the face of the earth. And he said that Castro said he was close to the Soviets back then. He said that the Soviets said that they could talk to JFK. He wasn't someone who was going to act impulsively and someone that you could negotiate with. And so Castro said that he didn't want Kennedy dead, that the Soviets didn't want Kennedy dead. So if you believe that, that kind of puts a damper on the whole Cuban conspiracy things with JFK. But I want to talk about the Jack Ruby thing. Is really interesting.
Can I bring up something too?
Yeah.
I'm not a gun nut, but I don't know a lot about guns. But one thing I remember hearing was, because there were multiple shots in succession with each other and they were quick, that the gun he used he would have to reload in that record amount of time, and it was impossible to reload in that amount of time with that gun.
Yeah. No, it's not impossible. It was done in I think it was 7.4 seconds.
Well, they had like a Navy SEAL.
Yeah,
it was on this show. I can't remember what show it was. It might have been Penn and Teller, Penn and Teller, but the Navy SEAL couldn't even do it that fast.
Well, they've reenacted the shooting before, as far as the time, and it is possible to reload. It takes, I can't remember exactly the time.
But it has to be perfect. He was scrunched up in that little window. He was nervous. He was probably sweaty. Yeah. He was not a professional marksman.
Well, he was a sharpshooter in the military.
Who knows?
No, he was. That was his testing in the military. He was a sharpshooter, and later on, he was tested again, and he was I'm not sure about the military, how marksman and sharpshooter and things like that. But that's a common misconception, is that Oswald wasn't a sharpshooter. He was a sharpshooter, and the one thing about that, and that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I wanted to talk about. A lot of the conspiracy theorists, I don't want to say conspiracy theorists, I don't want to say every person who doesn't necessarily believe is some conspiracy nut, but a lot of people believe that Oswald couldn't make the shot because he was using this crappy bolt-action rifle, and it took 2.8 seconds to reload, and in the time frame necessary, I think it was 7.4 seconds, the 3 shots came off on it. It takes 5.8 seconds to reload the 2 shots or something like that. So it would have to been basically perfect. And the 3rd shot was the one that killed him. A lot of people don't think that he could have aimed and reloaded and everything and had the 3rd shot be the one that was real accurate. And that's something that leads to conspiracy beliefs on that. But he was a sharpshooter, and there's been people who've reenacted this shooting who was able to do the shooting. A lot of people have done it and weren't able to reenact it with his accuracy. But he was a sharpshooter in the Marines.
Now, I'm reading here.
Where are you reading from?
It is from the Jfk Assassination Museum exhibit.
Okay.
And it's saying, in the 1950s... Okay, let me start at the beginning here. It says... Sorry, I was looking at it and I scrolled down. He was a trained marksman in the military. By the time he left in 1958, his skills had deteriorated. According to his Marine scorecard, he was tested twice. The Warren Commission needed to show that he was a better marksman than the experts from the U.S. Army. In the late 1950s, when he took his test, in 1956, after a very intensive 3 weeks, he scored a 212, 2 marks above the minimum for a sharpshooter. So there's the minimum, there's the middle, and there's the high. In May of 1959, he scored even lower, a 191, 1 mark above the minimum.
Yeah, so he's scored as a sharpshooter, and later on he was scoring lower.
But he was deteriorating as the time goes on. Now, I'm not saying that's all subjective. You don't know. Right. But if his skills were deteriorating that much, shooting a moving car from that far away...
But you have to consider, the fact that was 1959, you said that happened. That was 4 years later that he supposedly shot Kennedy, and over the course of 4 years, you could get out, you could shoot, go to gun ranges. I mean, that's something that with that argument, you could go either way. You could say his skills were deteriorating, or you could say, well, yeah, but he had years and years where he...
It's like exercising. You could get back in shape.
Yeah, and he actually tried to assassinate another political face, another political...
Yeah.
My mind's just going blank now, but there was another person that he tried to assassinate. Look that up, because I know that Lee Oswald tried to assassinate someone a few months earlier, and I want to say he was a state representative in Louisiana. He tried to assassinate somebody, and he ended up failing. He just missed. But people need to read about Lee Harvey.
They never caught him for it either. He got away.
People need to understand Lee Harvey Oswald. type of person that he was. He was a political activist. He was a communist.
He was a wife beater.
Yeah, well, there was that. But then he was a communist.
Major General Edwin Walker.
Edwin Walker.
That sounds familiar now.
Yeah, he was someone who was very active, and he was considered a radical. He was a Marxist-Leninist is what they called him back then. He was basically a communist sympathizer. Or not communist, but he was a Marxist-Leninist, and they're considered different politically. But he was a guy who was very, very outspoken. He took part in debates. He was active in town hall meetings, or what would be the equivalent of a town hall, where he would go and he would have debates with people, and he was considered a radical. Now, if you look at his military history, a lot of people think that he was a spy that was part of a false defector program. He went over to the Soviet Union. He declared his allegiance to the Soviets, and then a few years later, he ended up coming back to the United States. He was granted citizenship from the United States, and he also brought his wife Marina over with him from the Soviet Union, and that leads to conspiracy theories about whether or not he was a false defector, if he was part of a program to be able to spy on the Russians during the Cold War. And the fact that he was allowed back in the United States after defecting certainly leads to that, because that's basically committing treason, which is punishable by death. And so that leads to conspiracy theorists. But the thing with the gun and, could he have made the shot, that's something that a lot of people talk about. That's
wouldy couldy. You don't know. There's no definite proof of that.
Yeah, but the thing is about that is that, like, he deteriorated and everything else. And I hate to say this because people are going to say, oh, yeah, well, but, it could just be a case of him getting lucky. Like, that shot was just luck.
Almost like the stars aligned. And,
the first shot missed completely. The second shot hit Kennedy in the back of the throat. And the third shot just caught him, and he just got lucky.
The first shot would have killed him, when he got hit in the throat. That would have killed him.
Kennedy had a bad back. He had a bad back from his time in the Navy, and he wore like this.
He had spinal degeneration, like I have.
But he wore this thing underneath his suit where it was like a
brace,
like a girdle.
Yeah.
And he actually swam every day to ease chronic back pain. And when he got shot, he kind of went like this, and he wasn't able to completely fall over. And they think that if he would have fell over, and that third shot would have missed him, that they actually could have saved Kennedy's life, because he just would have had that one shot to his throat.
Unless it hit him in the spine or something.
Well, yeah, but you see him reach up like this, grab his throat. So he could have been saved had he not
been nerves, though.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but the point is that they may have been able to, they may not have been able to, but that brace that he was wearing to ease his back pain prevented him from slumping over, and that's what was able to get that third shot.
That sucks.
Now there's all the conspiracy theories center around the mob, and Jack Ruby obviously a few days later showed up in the basement of the police station in the parking garage and shot Oswald. So there was never going to be a trial. There's never, we're never going to have that evidence out in the public sphere and have Oswald tried for the murder of Kennedy.
Did Ruby get locked up for that?
Yeah, Ruby went to.
I didn't know if he got shot as he was shooting Oswald.
No, Ruby got arrested, and he ended up dying in prison 3 years later of stomach cancer.
Okay.
But actually, when I was in Dallas, there was a restaurant called Campese's, and you walk in, it's real dark, and it's got that 50s tone, and that's supposedly where Jack Ruby used to meet with the mob. And that's where
he was heavily tied with the mob.
Yeah, he had a nightclub that mob owners frequented, and a lot of people think that Oswald was tied in with certain aspects of the mob there in Dallas, and one reason why they would have had Jack Ruby shoot him
to keep him from talking,
and shedding light on the mob and their ties with Kennedy and things like that.
I know there's nuts out there, but for Jack Ruby to go out of his way to hunt down Oswald for killing the president and try to kill him like that, put his own life on the line, there had to be a reason behind it.
Well, yeah, they think the mob wanted. It's basically if the mob comes to you and you're in debt to the mob and they tell you to do something, like, you do it.
Yeah.
You do it, or else you're going to be, and you and your family is going to be a hell of a lot of trouble.
Why would a successful businessman like Ruby throw his life away like that?
Yeah, I mean, because you're going to die if you don't, basically, and your family could be in trouble. But there's that. So the ties with the Castro thing. A lot of people think that Lyndon Johnson may have been behind it, which I don't believe that. I mean, I don't believe any of that stuff. But another popular theory is that the aspects of the military-industrial complex wanted Kennedy dead because Kennedy was actually going to pull the troops out of Vietnam, and that war is a very profitable business for a lot of people in the government and people in the military, like people who work for the Boeing and these defense contractors. A lot of people think that Kennedy was going to pull them out of Vietnam, and because war is so profitable that people were going to have him killed. And Lyndon Johnson, obviously after that happened, took the troops into Vietnam.
I believe that the government was involved in some capacity. It might not be a direct capacity, but they were involved somehow.
Well, what do you mean?
Like either somebody knew, because like they had Lee Harvey Oswald being investigated, and they just never really acted on it. They had him going to Russia and coming back, him meeting with people, and nobody really did anything about it.
Well, if he was a false defector, then the government, he would have done that under with the help and control, with basically the help and the okay by the government. But in terms of Kennedy, there was 2 assassination plots I've read about before they went to Dallas. There was one in Chicago, and I want to say there was one in Washington D.C. where they ended up calling off the assassination for one reason or another, or the attempted assassination. But in terms of him pulling the troops out of Vietnam, Robert Kennedy came out in an interview shortly after John died, and he said that Kennedy was never going to pull the troops out of Vietnam. That was you're getting a phone call.
Oh.
Is that her?
I don't know who it was. We're going to take a break. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry about that, people. Technical difficulties. We were discussing Kennedy, Vietnam, government, shady aspects of the government, the good stuff. No, but we were talking about Vietnam and how Kennedy, I've read, actually was not planning on pulling the troops out of Vietnam because he was worried about overexpansion of communism into Southeast Asia. And as Noah stated, he said that he believes that the government was knowledgeable of Oswald's actions, and he may have been a false defector from Russia, and there's that whole aspect of it that people have wondered about. And one thing, now I don't know if that brings up a good point. I don't know if this is part of these files, but one thing will be interesting to see is if they release Lee Harvey Oswald's tax returns. Because if he was being paid from the United States while he was in Russia, and he supposedly had defected, it will show on his tax returns.
That's kind of messed up.
Yeah, and so that's why I don't think, first of all, I don't think they're going to release anything that anybody's going to be, even if they did release all these files, I don't think there's going to be anything in there that people are going to go, oh.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure they'll find something to pick at, though.
Well, and it's just going to be like, oh, well, the government released them, and so it doesn't matter. People aren't going to believe it, and they're not going to believe that the government released everything. So there's that aspect of it, and people are going to believe what they want to believe. It's kind of like with the Obama birth certificate deal. Everybody wanted Obama's birth certificate, and it's kind of like, well, even if he releases a birth certificate at this point, people aren't going to believe it. They're going to believe it's faked. They're going to believe it's a big hoax. And then he released it because of Donald Trump, and then that's why everybody said, oh, it could be staged and everything
all that
else.
is right now, like focusing on it now, is just diverting attention.
Right. Well,
that's all it is.
Well, and like back to the Kennedy thing, I don't think they're going to find anything in these files, but it's still interesting the fact that they're releasing it all these years later, and we're going to supposedly know what the government knew that they didn't release to the people.
The government's not going to release something that would incriminate themselves.
Well, right, and
that's obvious. If you believe that it's going to be, if it was a cover-up, and you believe that you're going to get these papers, these files, and the government's going to incriminate itself by letting the public see it, you're crazy.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Now, one of the things that they've done is they've talked about the eyewitness accounts of the assassination that day and what people remember seeing and hearing and things like that. and people talk about how they heard shots coming from the grassy knoll and things like that. But what's interesting about eyewitness accounts is how really unreliable they are. And I remember I took a class on the Jfk assassination when I was at Purdue University, and the first day in this class, the professor didn't tell us he was going to do this, and he had two students. He had one student drop a pencil, and he had another student get up when that happened and walk out of the room, and he looked at the class and said, he rubbed his stomach, goes, "Oh, I drank too much water." And the whole class was like, "What in the world just happened?" And then he goes, "Okay, I want everybody to take a piece of paper out and write down what just happened." And there was like 30-some students in the class, and he got 20-some different explanations of what had just happened.
I think a lot of professors do that.
But
I've had something like that similar too.
It just shows like how unreliable eyewitness testimonies and accounts are. And when you talk about when conspiracies come out, people will think, "Oh, well, I remember seeing this," and I'm not saying these people are lying, but
it's. I watch a lot of murder investigations on TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a defense mechanism. When you witness something traumatic, your brain kind of tells your body what to do. Like you go into like an autopilot, and your brain kind of makes stuff up. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You exaggerate stuff, you make stuff up, and if something happens that's so traumatic, you can't process it.
Well, there's also just the aspect of people saying they were on Dealey Plaza that day, and people saying, "Hey, well, what did you see?" And you could say, "Well, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything."
Yeah.
Well, that's boring. Like, and I don't want to accuse anybody of making stuff up, but I mean, let's be honest. There's
it's like with
reason to kind of be a little hyperbolic with the way you remember your accounts, and
it's like with kids. I've seen like shows where kids, like their mom gets murdered and they see it. This is dark.
That's really dark. Wow.
But I've heard like, kids he was a big monster with like a wolf face and stuff like that, because that's what their brain scrambles and makes them believe that. It's a false witness, but they're not lying. They're being honest of what they saw, what they think they saw.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I know what you're saying.
I know it's kind of stupid and far-fetched, but adults work the same way.
Right. And then there's the eyewitness accounts, and then there's what happened after that. Oswald took off. He left Dealey Plaza. And this is all allegedly, he traveled 2 or 3 blocks, and he ended up getting stopped by a police officer walking down the road, and he pulled out his gun. He shot a police officer. I think his name was J.D. Tippett, and killed this police officer and ran away. And there's been, obviously in the Oliver Stone film, they talk about that and suggest that witnesses may have seen, there may have been 2 people that shot him, and
two people.
The witnesses that saw who shot the cop didn't look anything like Oswald, but there's obviously witnesses that say it was Oswald. He could have had a pickup.
He could have had somebody.
Well, do you remember how he got arrested? Where he was? Oswald was picked up in a movie theater. He went inside a movie theater and sat down, and people have said, how did they know he was in the movie theater? And I can only, refer people to Vincent Bugliosi's book, because he goes through minute by minute and explains what happened. And they nailed it down at a very early process of where the shots took place from, and that was from the book depository.
They would have found him eventually.
And then you get a log of who's there and who's not there, and then it happens very quickly. You have to remember, this was the President of the United States. Now,
it's like instant.
And JFK went to the Dallas Memorial Hospital, and they were going to perform a coronary, and the Secret Service basically said, we're going to take him back to Washington, or whatever we call it, not a coronary.
I just lost the word too.
The coroner. They're going to do an autopsy.
Yeah, autopsy.
And they said, no, we're taking his body back to Washington. And people said that's proof of a cover-up. They don't want the coroner to see anything. And you have to understand, the mood of the day in Dallas was absolute panic. They didn't
get out of here.
They wanted to get out of Dodge because they didn't know if Lyndon Johnson was going to be a target. They didn't know what was going on.
Plus, the government probably has doctors they want to work with more than doctors.
Yeah,
like their own special doctors.
Well, there was laws at the time that said that the body had to stay in Dallas to do an autopsy, and Secret Service basically said, piss off with your laws. We're taking it back to Washington. And I can understand why people think that may be signs of a cover-up. But they wanted to get the body on Air Force One and have him travel back to Washington. And Lyndon Johnson, people said that it could be a cover-up, and he did have the vehicle cleaned right afterwards, that he was shot in. But Lyndon Johnson didn't want to take off to Washington and leave the president in some hospital in Dallas. It looked like he was fleeing, looked like he was a coward. He didn't want to do that.
That's why there's a famous picture where he's getting sworn in on the plane, and Jackie's standing next to him with blood all over her.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very famous picture. If you've never seen it, definitely look it up.
But, yeah, so that's kind of, that's why the Secret Service explained what happened. And the Secret Service has gone through. There's one conspiracy theorist that I actually find more feasible than the rest, and that's that the shots had rung out, and there was a couple new Secret Service agents on the road that day, and they were winding. And the whole attitude that Secret Service was backing off and everything is because they were at the end of the parade route. They were getting ready to get onto the bypass and drive away, so they were kind of winding down. And I think that one thing that could have happened is that the shots rang out, and Secret Service may have pulled their weapons, and I think that one may have accidentally shot the bullet that killed Kennedy. That's the only conspiracy theorist that
that has to be just a freak accident of
but that's the
one
only
in 100 billion.
Yeah, it could have happened.
It could have happened.
That's the one thing that I think it could have happened, because if you go back, there's a Secret Service agent who was right in the line of Kennedy.
It's possible, but not probable.
Well, no, I'm saying it's the only one that I would even lend any credence to. But there's people look at that video and they see that his head going back to the left, and they think that's proof that a bullet came from the front. And I remember there was a Penn and Teller episode where they were doing this, and they were showing they put, I think it was a cantaloupe, up on this pedestal, and they shot it from the back, and it showed when it shot it from the back. I don't understand the physics of it, but the cantaloupe actually fell backwards, like Kennedy's head did.
Some bullets are so fast and powerful that they just go right through something.
Right.
It's like they don't push your head this way or that way. You just fall with gravity.
Right. But there's, and I feel like with conspiracy theorists, there's in terms of the physics of it, there's like with the magic bullet and his head going back into the left. And
I keep thinking of that, like Juicer, the magic bullet.
Oh yeah,
you remember?
Yeah, and
making orange juice and stuff.
Yeah, and there's evidence that debunks these things. Now, whether you accept it or not is another thing, but there's evidence to debunk that. Now, Oswald, like you said, was found in a movie theater, and he was questioned by Dallas police for a few days, and of course he had the line, "I'm just a patsy," and everything else.
Yeah.
But like
that guy, you look at pictures of him. He looks like the kind of arrogant prick that you would just want to smash in the face.
That's what everybody said. That's what.
He just got that look to him.
That's what Secret Service and people in the Dallas Police Department said. This was
a pipsqueak.
He had little man syndrome. He was a short little coward of a guy.
Yeah.
Who wanted to matter, and that's that's kind of fits the characteristics of someone who would do something like that. But it's like with the conspiracy theory, if the government was behind it, why let him sit in a Dallas police station for 3 days? Like, you telling me they couldn't have had something put in his food or something like that to kill him? Like, there's to let him sit in a Dallas police station and get in front of news cameras and pronounce his innocence and everything else, like.
But that's the government on a small scale. The police station and maybe the CIA there might not have something to do with it. They're not going to take direct action because they don't know what's going on.
Well, the point is, if they knew what was going to happen, like, why would they let Oswald get up there and pronounce it? If he really was just a patsy, why not just go in there and shoot him in the movie theater and kill him in the movie theater? That's what they do today.
But they might not have known it was a setup. It might have been a higher level. And they were just there.
Yeah, but if you're going to do that on such a high level of
government, I'm not saying I believe that.
No, I'm saying, but if you're going to do that, why say, okay, we're going to do that, and then we're just going to let him get captured? Like, no, you're going to make sure that person is taken out. You're not going to let the local police station.
You're going to tie up the loose ends.
Yeah, and so Like,
but sometimes eliminating him like that, you make yourself look more guilty by doing stuff like that. Just like, I don't want to go into it, a certain political candidate recently and all those mysterious deaths surrounding the campaign makes you look more guilty than just not doing anything.
I don't know what you mean. Are you saying that by killing Oswald it made him look...
If the government had something to do with it, and Oswald's sitting in the police station and he dies of food poison, the mysteriousness of that and him just conveniently dying automatically spells cover up.
Yeah, but to who? Like to
everybody.
Yeah, but you think they, like, if that was, you think they care about what the people think? Like, you think they care about what
the government cares about what the people think? Because if they have a revolt, if people find out that the government's working against their best interests, there's going to be massive revolts. And
I don't buy that.
I believe that. I'm not saying I believe that's what happened. I'm just saying the government wants to look like the good guy. I mean, they always want to look like the good guy.
In that scenario where the government knows about it, like, what you would want to do is you'd want to have a lone gunman, have him be the person that you pin everything on, and then you take that person out. You kill that person, and then he goes down in history as the lone gunman, and you don't give him a chance to get in front of TV for 3 days and say, "Oh, I'm innocent," and this and that, and have Jack Ruby kill him, and in the messy way that he did. Like,
I think we're saying the same thing.
No, I'm saying that I'm saying that the government is not going to, in a situation like under that narrative of them knowing about it, like, they're not going to worry about how it looks if the person ends up dead. Like, I don't believe that for a second. I don't think they're going to worry if the person, we don't want to give him food poisoning or whatever. We don't want to eliminate him in jail because it might look bad. So let's let him get up. Let's not do anything and let him get out in front of TV and talk for 2 or 3 days. Like, you're going to want to eliminate that person as quick as possible and say that the suspect was so-and-so and he owned the rifle. And then there's other issues with the case that people have. Like, for one, Oswald bought the gun from ordered it from a catalog when he just could have walked in, had a record, had it traced, and he could have just walked into a gun show and bought it.
Yeah.
People have those questions.
Wasn't he at a gun show like days before that?
I don't know about that.
Or was that just the Stephen King crap that they put on
Stephen
TV?
King, you mean?
Show where he was at the gun show. Remember 11/22/63?
Oh, I don't know.
It's funny because I'm a history mate. I studied history. I like the JFK conspiracy. It's kind of cool, but I never put too much focus on it.
Right, and yeah, I don't know, but like questions like that is just like, I don't know why he did that. He ordered it, not thinking. Maybe he didn't plan on killing the president with it.
Well, that's kind of something you plan on.
Well, I'm saying, maybe he's coming into Dallas, and a week later he decides. I mean, just because you don't have an answer to every question doesn't mean you just instantly go to a conspiracy theory. But
sometimes things just happen.
Yeah,
that's how it happens.
So I think that Oswald acted alone. I think that he got lucky that day in Texas. I think he got lucky. I think that he was the lone gunman, and I think in situations like that, it's hard for people to believe that just some lone, pissant little wannabe tough guy fired off 3 shots and beat the Secret Service and got Kennedy. Like, sometimes there's just enough room for someone to squeeze in there. And
well, it's like when something bad happens to somebody and the mom or dad lifts a car off of them because of their adrenaline. His adrenaline would have been firing off like crazy. Oh. He would have had perfect focus and energy to do this.
Oh yeah, and that's like I said, that's something that someone like him would have wanted. He wanted to do this big, be this big person, who did something historical. And if he did pull off the shots, and we'll never know for sure. These files aren't going to do anything. It's interesting to talk about, but like,
I think it's fun to talk about. I don't put any faith in them.
No.
Just like the 9/11 one, it's hard to believe that so many people can keep a secret for so many years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you talk about like the 9/11 conspiracy. People think that the government was behind that. It's you get into the point where so many people have to know about something, and you can't keep anything a secret anymore.
Yeah.
I had a situation recently where I told one person something in a job, and they went and blabbed their mouth off. It's like you can't. No one can keep a secret anymore.
Especially with the journalists that dig and dig and dig, like something would have been uncovered. But we're not going to get into that.
No.
I believe that the government was not involved in JFK. If they were involved, it was unintentionally. I believe the way they got involved was seeing the telltale signs and ignoring them, or
complacency.
Complacency. Just letting people like Oswald run around and do what they want.
And so this is, like I said, this is the 60s, and at this point in time, it'd been 100 years since any kind of assassination.
Yeah,
of a public figure like
almost
that.
100 years.
And so
there was an attempted one before.
Well, there were attempted
Kennedy.
Yeah,
there's attempted ones all the time, though.
Yeah, but this is like, I mean, if you have a chance to go to Dallas and see that scene, man, it's incredible. You see. Because Dallas is so metropolitan now, and all these buildings, it's just a phenomenal city. But this area of Dallas,
they kind of kept it like old times.
And another thing is that when you're coming down, one thing that people talk about is when Oswald was up on that 6-story view. Kennedy's, what do you call that? All those cars in a row. The
convoy.
Not a convoy. Something, or anyway, the parade was coming straight on that road. I can't remember what the name of the road is, but it's coming straight towards the building, and he would have had a perfect shot at Kennedy. And one of the things is, why didn't he take that shot right there? If he comes around the corner, goes around that turn, Kennedy's going away from him, he's going to have a harder shot. And that's exactly why you do it. You shoot him as he's going away, and hopefully people don't...
Cavalcade. A succession of people walking or in vehicles.
Okay.
Anyway,
but yeah, the route, like the route was changed and things like that, which leads to conspiracy theories. But like I said, I think that Oswald acted alone. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of things that people find hard to believe. Just the fact that this little guy was able to fire off these 3 shots, one after another, with this crappy bolt-action rifle. He landed a shot on the president, and goes down in history as him and John Wilkes Booth.
You know what? Too bad he didn't live long enough to celebrate his victory.
Well, it's like,
whatever.
Yeah, but it was I recommend people read the books by Vincent Bugliosi.
And Helter Skelter is really cool too.
Helter Skelter is a great book.
It's a lot darker, but it's pretty cool.
But we think JFK was killed by a lone gunman. Don't buy into the conspiracy theorists. I think they all can be disproved if you have an open mind and you're not just agenda driven with conspiracies. But I think we're going to call it a wrap on here. We're getting towards our time expiration here. So I want to thank you for listening to this. We just wanted to talk about the conspiracy. We may come back and do another video on conspiracy theories because it's a fun topic. Everybody likes a good conspiracy theory, but
definitely
stay tuned to the news, see if they release the files.